Hello there, welcome. Man, if my last video was recorded pretty late at night, this one is, it's up there. It's almost 4 a.m. I'm here to talk about Pinocchio movies. The only real reason why is we're getting 3 of them this year. That was just too much for me to brush it off and say, oh, whatever, it's some kind of weird coincidence. And it probably is a weird coincidence, ultimately. However, I saw this as an opportunity to try to derive some kind of meaning or lesson from the fact that Pinocchio, apparently as a character, or the basic story of Pinocchio, continues to endure. Why is that? Well, I have a couple guesses, and I also want to get into some of the details of these 3 individual movies, or at least based on what I know of them so far. So, the 3 movies. We have Pinocchio, A True Story, even though it's not a true story at all, so there's that. That's from Lionsgate. That was direct DVD and VOD. That came out back in March of this year. I'll get back to that one in a second. And then we have a live-action Disney remake of Pinocchio coming out in September, I believe, straight to Disney Plus, and apparently leading into the D23 Expo for this year. And then the last one is Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, which is releasing November, December. I think it has a limited theatrical release ahead of its official Netflix release. The theatrical release there might be to adhere to Oscars rules. In the past, it's been a thing where you have to show a movie in some theater at some time for it to be eligible for Oscars nominations. Don't know if that's still a thing, but it's also a prestige release for Netflix, so whatever. Now, right up front, even if we just look at some footage from the trailers, the Lionsgate movie is not really in the running in any serious way. Not that these movies are necessarily in direct competition with each other, despite the fact that they're all basically, the same subject matter. They have the same source material. The Lionsgate movie's cheap junk, very bad. If you just listen to a couple lines of dialogue from that trailer, in which Pauly Shore plays Pinocchio. Pauly Shore, ladies and gentlemen, is playing Pinocchio. His delivery just sounds like a joke.
Let's go, Tybalt! Great adventures away!
Not very good. Looks awful. However, the Lionsgate movie is also the only movie of the 3 that seems to be giving us some kind of relatively new story. It's not just the standard Pinocchio thing. It's this time he joins a circus, I guess. Don't know why. Not super interested, but at least it's different. At least it's not the standard story. And it brings us to the pretty obvious question of why? Why is Pinocchio still such a thing? I have a couple of guesses. One of them is much more cynical than the other, but the less cynical response in my mind just has to do with the fact that the core messaging of the Pinocchio story, or various Pinocchio stories really, is just that it speaks to a desire to belong. It's about a character who wants to be loved, a character who wants to fit in, who is really eager to form connections and relationships, if we really want to stretch it. Somewhat naive, it's also a coming of age story. And we're not exactly at a loss for those kinds of movies with that kind of messaging. Not at all, especially in like the children's entertainment space. There's tons of that all the time. So Pinocchio is not especially different in that way, but still a popular character, I guess, or at the very least a known character, which leads into my second possible answer for why we're getting so many of these movies. It has name recognition. People know the name of Pinocchio. They know the basic story. We've seen it so many times before. Wikipedia says there have been roughly 30 different Pinocchio adaptations in like film and television. It's an established media entity. Apparently no one owns the actual rights to it. It derives from an Italian novel in the 1860s, I think. So maybe it's just public domain, so no one can actually own the rights, and that's why we're getting it from so many different sources and studios. As we know, Disney in particular, plenty of other big studios, producers, they'll give the green light to something that has any real amount of name recognition. If they feel like it is a known entity, it immediately has a leg up on something brand new, which has to do more marketing legwork, rather than just saying Pinocchio, oh, I know Pinocchio. Everybody knows Pinocchio. Maybe they have positive associations with the old classic Disney movie. Maybe they saw that insane live action adaptation with Jonathan Taylor Thomas made in the 90s. It's a thing people know about, and these days especially, that is more than enough to get something approved. I made some apricot tea. Apricot? How do we want to say that? It's pretty good. I really like it. I should do it iced next time, but this is okay too. I also do genuinely think that there's a certain amount of creative challenge to the story of Pinocchio, to adapting it yet again. I mean, for one thing, I guess you could say there's always a challenge in doing yet another adaptation of something we've seen a million times before. There's room for differentiation. There's room to do something unique with the story and with the characters and how you portray the world, and even just in terms of very basic production choices like, okay, do we make it live action? Do we make it an animated thing? We're seeing two completely different approaches between the Disney movie and the Del Toro movie. The Del Toro movie, by the way, I'm sure as you saw in the footage here, fully stop motion, was apparently co-written by Patrick McHale. So all the animation people out there are already a fan of him, are like, oh yeah, anything with an autumnal color palette, he's the guy. No, I like his work quite a bit. Obviously, Del Toro has this incredible precedent for doing some more like horrific and like fairy tale exaggerated worlds and environments and creatures and stuff. So that's the one I'm most excited for relative to the others. I wouldn't be surprised to hear that most people feel that way about it. And then over here on the Disney side of things, we just have yet another live action remake. Is there anything really to say about that choice at this point of taking something that was originally a really strong animated movie, or at least a visually compelling animated movie, and making it live action but with some animated elements? So Jiminy Cricket, I guess, is just a full CG character played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Both the Del Toro movie and the Disney movie, they're really going for just this star-studded cast. Just like, oh, you know all these names. And I honestly just don't know how much people actually care. Obviously, there's an expectation. It's just a beloved tale, and everybody's going to come out to see it, or rather stay at home to stream it. And I don't know. Do we care? Specifically as people sort of interested in animation, invested in animation. Is there any question as to which of these movies is going to have any amount of staying power? How many of the Disney live action remakes do we have to have before somebody figures out that it's just more fast food? Like, it's so temporary. The Del Toro one, by the way, for a bit more background, has apparently been in development hell since like 2008. It's been trying to get made for a very long time, and then all of a sudden, seemingly all of a sudden, we're also getting a Disney Pinocchio movie that same year. Is anyone else getting flashbacks to the whole like Thief and the Cobbler situation versus Aladdin, or like Lion King versus what was it, like, is it Kuma the White Lion? I'll look it up. I feel some potential sleaze here behind the scenes. Certainly wouldn't be anything new for Disney, but just a strange situation. What a weird situation. What a strange moment, and perhaps one that's indicative of this apparently undying trend. Anything we know about already, whatever's already grabbed some real estate in your brain, that is what we will continue to see, I guess, just made over and over and over again. Forever. Like, I don't see any sign of this slowing down. The whole remake reboot thing, new adaptations of very old properties, just keeps happening. I don't think the trend has died off at all. Superhero movies will die off before we start seeing fewer remakes. Like, it just doesn't end. But please feel free to share your thoughts with me. I would really appreciate that. But that is all for now. Thanks for stopping by. I'm gonna finish my tea here. Oh, it's the tea bag in the cup. I was like, what is it? Is there like sludge here? It's just a tea bag. It looked weird.